I never imagined that a single experience could forever alter the way I viewed experience, a shocking near-death testimony, as a man recounts a vision that defies belief. In this powerful account, he nearly died and witnessed the Virgin Mary weeping in hell for tormented souls. This compelling narrative challenges conventional views of the afterlife and reveals a mysterious side of divine intervention. Discover how this miraculous vision ignited a profound spiritual awakening, offering a second chance at faith and redemption. Prepare to be captivated by an extraordinary story of shock, sorrow, and hope as you witness an encounter that may forever change your perspective on life, death, and the eternal realm. Absolutely transformative, the afterlife. As a devout Catholic, I had always clung to the teachings of our church, believing wholeheartedly in the promises of heaven and the warnings of hell. But nothing in my lifetime prepared me for the night that changed everything. A night when I crossed the boundary between life and death and beheld a vision that defied all my expectations. It began on an ordinary evening after Vespers. I had just returned home from a quiet night of prayer and reflection when I began feeling a deep, unsettling fatigue. At first, I assumed it was merely the weariness of a long day, but within minutes, my vision blurred and my heartbeat thundered in my ears. In a surreal haze, I found myself drifting away from the familiar comforts of my body and entering a realm that seemed neither entirely of this world nor completely of the next. I soon became aware of my surroundings through sensations rather than sight, a feeling of cold, heavy darkness that pressed in from all sides. I was no longer in the warm glow of earthly life. Instead, I had been drawn into a vast, somber landscape that exuded an eerie sorrow. I recognized, almost immediately, that I had entered Hell, a place of torment and despair, where the cries of the forsaken echoed endlessly. In that desolate space, I witnessed scenes of unspeakable agony. Souls, their features twisted in pain and regret, wandered aimlessly along barren paths. The very air was thick with despair and the heavy stench of sulfur, and every step seemed to vibrate with the weight of eternal punishment. Amid the overwhelming gloom, however, something impossible caught my attention: a radiant figure, softly illuminated amid the shadows of damnation. I struggled to focus, my heart pounding with both terror and disbelief. There, standing among the anguished souls, was a woman of extraordinary grace and beauty. Her face was serene despite the horror around her, and her eyes shone with compassion as if they held the entire mercy of heaven within them. I knew in that instant beyond any shadow of a doubt that I was looking at the Virgin Mary. The sight of her in hell was at once jarring and inexplicably tender. I had always imagined Mary as an ever-present beacon of hope and consolation, safe in the splendor of heaven. Yet here she was, descending into the very depths of despair to reach out to those trapped by their own sin. Her garments, once thought to be pure and immaculate, were stained with the tears of sorrow. Her gentle face bore the imprint of a grief so profound that it transcended mortal understanding. I moved closer, compelled by a mixture of awe and an urgent need to understand what was unfolding before me. The air around her vibrated with a delicate radiance, a light so soft it seemed to whisper of salvation, even in a place as forsaken as hell. As I approached, I noticed that the tormented souls in her vicinity appeared to pause in their suffering, their cries momentarily hushed, as if in reverence. It was as if her very presence brought a brief reprieve from the relentless tormentor promise that even in the darkest realm, mercy might still be found. I felt an indescribable pull, a longing to know why she had come here. In a voice that seemed both gentle and filled with immeasurable sorrow, she spoke not in words, but through a profound communication that resonated directly within my soul. I understood her message with startling clarity. She had come not as a conqueror, but as a compassionate intercessor for the souls lost in this purgatorial torment. The Virgin Mary, the Mother of our Savior, had descended to these depths to offer hope, a chance for redemption, even for those condemned to suffer for their earthly misdeeds. In that moment, I witnessed an extraordinary scene. Mary extended her hands toward a group of suffering souls huddled in the shadows. Her eyes, brimming with empathy, met those of a young man whose face was marred by the anguish of unrepentant sin. As if by divine intervention, a soft glow enveloped the man. His tortured expression softened, and for a brief instant, the relentless agony of his punishment was replaced by a flicker of hope. It was a silent testament to the power of intercession, a promise that no soul was ever beyond the reach of God's mercy, if only it could accept forgiveness. I watched in both horror and wonder as Mary moved through hell like a guardian of the lost, gently touching the foreheads of the damned. Her touch seemed to dissolve their chains of torment, if only for a moment, and I could almost believe that her tears carried away the burdens of their sins. The juxtaposition was overwhelming. Amidst the raging fires and ceaseless wails of despair, here was a figure embodying the tender, redemptive love of God. The scene left me grappling with conflicting emotions. I had always been taught that hell was a realm of eternal separation from God, place where divine mercy was absent. Yet here was the Virgin Mary, the epitome of God's compassion, descending into that abyss not to condemn but to save. I wondered if this vision was meant for me, a final lesson imparted as I teetered on the brink of death. Was this a glimpse of a reality far more complex than the simplistic dichotomy of heaven and hell taught by man? Time lost meaning in that dreadful space. I remained there, suspended in the twilight of suffering and grace, absorbing every detail of that miraculous encounter. The longer I lingered, the more I realized that Mary's presence was a bridge, a connection between the hope of salvation and the despair of unredeemed souls. Her eyes, filled with an eternal sorrow, seemed to plead with the damned. Do not lose hope. Even in the darkest place, God's love can still reach you. I tried to speak, to ask her why she had come, but words failed me. Instead, I listened to the silent symphony of compassion that surrounded her. Every tear that fell from her eyes, every gentle caress she bestowed upon the suffering, communicated a promise of eventual redemption, a reminder that even in hell, there was a path toward light, if one could only accept divine forgiveness. Gradually, the overwhelming intensity of that vision began to recede, as if I were being drawn back toward the world of the living. I felt a powerful pull urging me to return, to carry this message of hope out into a world that so desperately needed it. The last image I retained as I was lifted away was of the Virgin Mary, standing resolute amid the flames, her gaze fixed on a distant horizon that shimmered with the promise of grace. When I awoke in the hospital, the memory of that night was as vivid as if it had been etched into my very soul. Doctors marveled at my inexplicable recovery, and I too was left to ponder the inexplicable nature of my near-death experience. I found myself changed, haunted by the vision, yet filled with an undeniable sense of hope and purpose. I knew that I had been given a rare glimpse into the mysteries of the afterlife, a vision that challenged everything I had believed about divine justice and mercy. Since that night, I have dedicated myself to sharing this testimony, not to instill fear, but to awaken a deeper understanding of God's boundless compassion. I speak of the Virgin Mary not as a distant figure confined to the heavens, but as a mother who reaches out even in the midst of our deepest suffering. Her presence in hell, as shocking as it may seem, is a testament to the transformative power of her intercession, a promise that no soul is ever truly abandoned, no matter how far it may have strayed. For those who have lost hope, who feel overwhelmed by the weight of their sins, I offer this vision as a reminder. God's mercy extends beyond the boundaries of our understanding. Even in the bleakest depths of despair, there is a chance for redemption if we are willing to humble ourselves and seek forgiveness. The Virgin Mary, with her tears and gentle touch, stands as a beacon of that hope, a reminder that our journey toward salvation is not defined solely by our failures, but by our capacity to receive and embrace divine love. I continue to pray daily for the souls I witnessed that night, and I implore others to join me in intercessory prayer. Each whispered plea, each heartfelt invocation, is a step toward lifting the burdens that weigh so heavily on the lost. In sharing my experience, I have found a renewed commitment to live a life of compassion, to extend the mercy that was so powerfully demonstrated to me, and to remind everyone that no one is beyond the reach of God's redeeming grace. Even now, as I reflect on that surreal encounter, I remain filled with gratitude and awe. The image of the Virgin Mary standing resolute amid the torment of hell endures as a powerful symbol of hope, a symbol that challenges us to see beyond the conventional dichotomies of eternal punishment and reward. It is a call to recognize that the divine love which flows from our Creator is capable of transforming even the most harrowing circumstances. In a world often consumed by despair, her silent promise is a reminder that mercy and grace are ever present, waiting to be embraced by those who seek it with a humble heart.